Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday Night Live. I hope everyone is well. I'm just trying to get it up on the screen. Today we're going to re-attempt, and hopefully it works through the phone than it did last time, re-attempt the partial embossing. Now that is one way that it is done, and this is the other way that it is done. So let me just turn my lights on here. I wondered why it was a bit dark. So this one here, just try and get it up on the screen so that I can see when people arrive. But I'm not getting comments. Why is it not doing that? Hello, Alison. How are you doing? I hope you're well. Hi, Andrea. Hope you're doing well. There we go. Alright, sorry, I'm caught up now. So, let me just move that to the side a bit. Ah, again, Alison! That is awesome. Okay, so this one here, hopefully you can see, is embossed around the outside here with the stamp, with where I've stamped. And then this piece in the middle has no embossing. It's completely smooth. So let me see if I can get that. It's a bit hard to see the embossing really because I've stamped so much, but in this part here is a really easy way for you to see it. Hi, Sue. Hi, Catherine. Oh, yeah, 6-year-olds is a bit much. And then this one here has just got this panel through the middle that has been embossed rather than the whole thing. Although that one feels like it's slightly, but this is where the embossing is happening. So when we tried to do this last time, I kept doing something wrong. It was not using thick enough card as my mask that I needed. So this one here, you can see I've already run it through the embossing folder, and so I'm using this one here, this embossing folder here, which is one of the 3-pack of Basics 3D embossing folders. It's a floral kind of texture. Comes in a set of 3. One's dots, the flowers, and then the other one is like a kind of like a linen texture, which is really quite cool. So this piece of card has come out from the back of like your foil paper, so the thicker card, and I suspect after a few uses it's going to compress down quite a bit, so you're going to need to adjust it accordingly. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to pop this on here and then pop a piece of cardstock in. Now you want to make sure that this is lined up as centered as possible. So my cardstock is not actually even, but we want to make sure that that is stuck down on there. So I'm just going to add a couple of bits of post-it note to hold it in place. I just need to move my stuff around a little bit to make some room. I don't know if Sandra's watching, but she was very kind and found a video to remind me of how to do this after the other day. It's a little bit embarrassing, but we will get there. So I'm just going to, I knew, like I had the right theory. I just didn't have, the right thickness card. So if you don't have a piece of, I think they call it chipboard. How thick is the card? It's probably about, I'd say that is about, where are we? It's about 3 millimeters, I'd say. It needs to be relatively thick. I was using it before and I just had 2 pieces of our cardstock stuck together. This might be a better indication. Might not be either. But yeah, I'd say it's about 2 to 3 millimeters. So the white one that you get with your DSP is probably too thin on its own. But the thicker, sometimes you get some specialty DSP that has extra thick base on it, would work, or I'd say maybe 3 or 4 layers of cardstock stuck together. That would do it. So I'm going to pop this. So you want to have a good ridge, basically, so that when it goes through the embossing machine, that doesn't get too close to the top. I'm not going to stamp first, but if you're going to use this and you want a border around the outside of it, what I did is I got my piece that I cut out, or you can use this piece here and trace around. You could do a pencil marking on it. I also didn't want stuff stamped in the middle, but I wanted it stamped around the outside. So I cut a post-it note or your masking tape the same size roughly as the hole that you've cut out, and so you would place that down, do your stamping, take it off, and then attach it to your mask that you're going to use. So the trick with this is that the mask is quite thick. You do need to be careful though, depending on your machine, so like this is a 3D embossing folder, and normally you would use the grey embossing plate, but I'm actually just going to use the standard clear plate, because otherwise it's too thick and it won't go through. So that's like having 5 pieces of paper in there. So we're going to, and you'll notice when you close it that it is quite, it does kind of mean that there's a bit of a gap. I'm actually going to bring it to the end here, as close to the end as I can, because then that just gives me a little bit of space at the top. Bring in the machine. More of our mat that's fallen off. Oh, we had our flu jabs at school today. Evening, Mary. And my arm's just feeling a little bit tired. Okay, so let's start out there. So I'm actually just using platform 1 to see how this goes, because it's quite thick. I want to put it towards the middle so that the plates get a grip before they start going through the machine. So you want to pop that in there like that, and then it will start to take. Now it is really tight, so just take your time, and then it will come out the other side, and fingers crossed this is right. This is the one that I found worked the best. Yeah, there we go. So if I take that off, you can see that through the post-it note that space there has not been embossed, all right, because it's got quite a depth here. Hi, Lisa. Oh, it's going to rip my mask. So just because of the pressure that is put through, just be gentle when you are taking, if you've got a masking piece on here, because it gets quite embedded into the paper. What you could do so that you don't end up tearing your project, especially if you've stamped it and everything, is just get rid of some of the tackiness of the post-it notes before you run it through. So let's have a look. Can you see that? Oh yeah, that's pretty good. So you can see that there's this nice clear piece here, that you can stamp in or decorate. And then if you wanted to, you could, I haven't lined that up very evenly, so I'm going to trim that there. But you could stamp in it before you emboss it. If you have not stamped in it before you've embossed it, it would be a good idea to get some post-it notes and kind of cover them up. Especially if you've got a long, like if you're just putting happy birthday or a sentiment in there with a couple of little decorative flowers or something, then it's not a problem. But if you've got quite a large stamp and you don't want it to, it won't stamp really clearly over that embossing. So you either want to stamp it before or afterwards. Make sure that you mask it off so that you don't get run off into that part of it. You can then use, what have I got here? Pink. What did I use pink for? I'm just not sure how dark it's going to be. Not very, but enough to pick it up. If you just carefully, I haven't inked this up, I've just got residual ink on my brush here, but you could ink it and it would give you if I put that away, then you can see a real subtle, can you see? It's a real subtle pink, but it actually just helps to pick up the texture in the embossing. So that's one way. The other way, there's obviously, you know, there's so many different ways. The other way is to use the insert that you have got. Now I popped it in this way, and actually, let's see if I can get, no, they're going to rip. I'm going to pop it in this way, and I'm actually going to put it down this way, because I want that to stay in place and it'll move otherwise. And then I'm going to pop my card in, so I want the embossing to be in that middle bit. Now this is where I had issues last time, because it started to emboss a little bit on the top, because it wasn't quite tall enough. So when you're doing the reverse of it, it's good to make sure that your piece in the center, or your shape, and you want to go as basic as shape as possible, so that you can get the full. Okay, so that's where we're gonna. Oh, everything on my trolley just fell over. So there we go. And again, it wasn't lined up very well, so it hasn't got so I could cut the border. This one here has done a little bit of embossing, just not as much, but the bottom half is not as embossed. So if I was to maybe bring it down a little bit, or put it up a little bit further, but you could play around with that. You could actually, there's not any embossing there. That's the deboss side, so you can see the shape, and that is the embossed side. So if I was to use, there's not enough ink on there, it's a bit dry. So you could kind of see the embossing a bit more by using the ink over the top. And as you can see here that there is some slight embossing, but depending what you were going to use your card for, it might not matter. So it may be that this needs to be smaller, it may be that it needs to be bigger, it might just need to be thicker, so that there's a bigger gap between the edge. because this part here, where is it? This part here is actually at your top. So it could be that you actually need to go this way. And so let's see. I want it to go this way. So if I put it towards the bottom more, and take another piece of card and poke it through that way and get it kind of centered. Is it going to fit that way? Yep. And then we bring this back in. Like so. And obviously you need to make sure that your embossing folder and cardstock is cut to the right size so that it goes through. And then this way through. You can feel it kind of decompressing a little bit, so it's not as tight. Move that over. Oh, no, hurt my arm. There we go, that's better. So you have a way better, crisper image, and then smoother around the outside. Now if you're going to do that one and you want to stamp on here, stamp it before you put it through, okay? But that comes out really nicely. So it depends on the smaller the pattern, the easier it's probably going to be to see it, because you're essentially cutting out a section. So that one's better. It works better going sideways. Depends on your shape as well that you want to use. If you keep with, see, that's ripping it now. If you keep with your standard shapes, it's going to be a whole lot easier. This just goes to show how deeply it has compressed. It's just pulled a layer of paper from the post-it note. So, and that's now starting to get a bit weak. The other thing that you can do, which I haven't got any cut, but you could, oh, we could cut this one now that it's kind of all a bit mank, is, this is decompressed a bit, so I'm not really sure if it's going to work, is that you can have smaller pieces, or however long, but you could have longer bits. And so if you wanted to have some embossing, ooh, we have it like that, then we can pop this in. How we going for wow, you guys have made some incredible cards this week. I can't believe it. It's not going to fit the way. Oh, I might go that way. No, you should always do it on the fold. Otherwise it might not go through evenly. Unless obviously paper is not. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, because the depth of my mask is not actually that. It's compressed quite a bit now. So here we go. So you could get images like so, and then you could stamp in here, or you could put your sentiment there. You could put an addition on to that one. So that is that's another option. So it doesn't have to just be partial in terms of we want that bit and the rest of it flat, or we want the frame on the outside, but you could have it so that you know, that could be a pathway or something. So you could do anything with it, really. I quite like to go over it, although you can't really see it very well, but I do quite like to go over it with ink. But in the same respect, it's also really nice just kind of by itself. That one worked really well, actually. And it hasn't, it's kind of caught at the top there because I put it too far in the folder. But again, you could trim that off and trim that off. and make it fit your card. So 2 cards. I haven't made a card with this one, so I might hold that and make a card with it. But the 2 cards that I showed you before. So this is, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. So this one here is the one where we've got the center piece. So we're using this mask here where the center is cut out. So wherever there is no pressure, not enough pressure, it's going to leave it blank. Wherever there is a thicker piece that's going to create more pressure, that's what that's going to create. That's that border shape, or whatever shape that you've got on your, I mean, you could have a circle or an oval, or you know, you could actually, what would be really cool is have a piece like this and you cut it into diagonals, and then so you have that center piece not there, and put it on the base of your card, and you get that panel, but then the rest of it's kind of embossed, which will look really cool. So that's this one, which you can't really see on here the embossing too well. There's a little bit down here that you can see because I kind of went to town with the flowers. This one here is our partial one like that, and I've just got the purple fresh freesia and sponged on the top to make it kind of stand out a little bit and not be all white. All right, well, I hope that you have a play around with that, because it's quite fun. It'd be quite good for scrapbooking, matting and stuff like that. You know, you could get a piece that is cut out the same size as your photos, so that you've got, and that will just sit a little bit nicer in your scrapbook. Yeah, I'm not going to actually make cards for you tonight, but I wanted to show you, and I'm really pleased with how this has turned out now. So the trick is to make sure that your mask is quite thick, and you put it inside the folder. So whereas I was putting it on the outside, and it was creating more pressure going through. So if you pop it on the inside, depending whether you want the embossed or debossed side, I tend to always put the Stampin' Up logo on the top, facing up. How do you cut the thick card? This one I actually put in my trimmer and measured it, and I ran it through a couple of times, and then I flipped it over and put it back in that same measurement, and then just cut it through again. Another pair of like normal cheap scissors will cut through it. If you don't have any really thick card, you could cut, I'd go like 4 sheets of cardstock and see how that goes. I would play around with it first and get the thickness of your machine, how that worked with your machine. If you find that 4 is a really good thickness, I would then glue it down so that it doesn't move around. So do a test one and then glue it all down, wait for it to dry, and then pop it through. If you find that you're not getting much of the embossing come through, then, and you've got, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of, it feels like you've got a bit of room in your thing, you could add another layer. So you could do 5, but I would test it out with 3 or 4 first and see how you go. So use a piece of, I'm using thick white cardstock as my matting that I'm trying to do. So that adds another layer as well. So you could get away with 3, but it's, yeah, I don't know how well you can see that. It's kind of like, yeah, I'd say it's about 2 or 3 millimeters, that one. Yeah. This might be, no, that's not really any easier to see. But that's about maybe 4 layers of cardstock, I think. Alright, Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope that you have a go with doing that. I'm loving the cards that are coming up from Sunday night, and the number of them, I think there's 4 so far, which is really super exciting. And yeah, so I look forward to seeing some more cards, and I look forward to seeing anything that you create out of this technique, whether it is just a couple of card fronts that you can then dress up and finish decorating later, or it is a completed card, or a few completed cards, because doing this, playing around with the different ways of doing it, is probably going to give you a few cards that you can make. So nice to add them to your stash. Now, seriously recommend, because that's now just going to weaken it, taking that sticky off, and maybe actually masking paper is better than sticky note. Who knows? But we're going to leave it there. I'm going to head off and go and get my daughter, and I will see you lovely people on Sunday. I hope you have a great rest of the week. I'm glad it's only a short week. It's been it's rough going back to work after 2.5 weeks. It shouldn't be, but it's always really busy. And so, you know, you forget very quickly how hard it is to go back to it. Anyway, so I feel you, Alison, with 6-year-olds. I only had half a day today because I was on CRT and I'm knackered. All right, bye for now. Thanks for joining me. See you on Sunday.